What is life? There's a purpose to every soul. Everyone is meant to make a mark. Life is the art of drawing without an eraser. Araminta Ross, or known by many as Harriet Tubman, helped many slaves escape the cruelty of slavery in the South, and that was her symbol in the world. She was nicknamed as Minty and was born in Dorchester County, Maryland, c. 1822. She was born into the inhumanity of slavery. At the age of 5 or 6, she began to work as a house servant. 7 years later, she had been sent over to the fields to work. She had gone through the barbarity of getting beaten up almost till death for her own choices. She was hit by a heavy iron weight that nearly crushed her skull and gave her seizures for the rest of her life, and spells of falling into a deep sleep anywhere, anytime. She was always determined to gain her freedom and always had faith in God, no matter what obstacles she had faced. After a couple of years, what had seemed like centuries, she was married to a free black man named John Tubman around 1844. Harriet's journey began when she started worrying about the fact that she and some other slaves were going to be sold. She was ready to make a plan to escape. She asked her husband to run away. He refused. She decided to take her 2 brothers and a few other slaves with her. Her brothers had changed their minds and returned back. She ensured they were safe and parted north. Her first step was to change her name. She took her mom's name and her husband's last name, and so her name became Harriet Tubman as undercover. That night, she saved enough money for labor, and she knew all the people of the Underground Railroad. She set out. The people that conducted the Underground Railroad helped her. A white Quaker woman aided her to shelter along with the slaves she was helping. The Quaker lady, whose name was unknown, she was part of the Underground Railroad network that provided safe houses and transportation for the fugitive slaves. All her traveling was done at night so she wouldn't be caught. Her journey was nearly 90 miles, and it was unknown how long it took her. She followed this exact same routine for other slaves. She made her way to Philadelphia, where she found work in hotels, clubhouses, and then Cape May, and was able to save money. She had planned to come back and rescue her family. I had crossed the line. I was free, but there was no one to welcome me to the land of freedom. I was a stranger in a strange land, and my home, after all, was down in Maryland. My father, my mother, my brothers, my sisters, and my friends were there. But I was free, and they should be free too, said Harriet. The following year, she returned to Maryland and escorted her sister and her sister's 2 children to freedom. She made the dangerous trip back to the South soon after to rescue her brother and 2 other men. On her 3rd return, she went after her husband, only to find he had taken another wife. Undeterred, she found another slave seeking freedom and escorted them to the north. During a 10-year span, she made 19 trips into the South and conducted over 300 slaves to freedom. She never lost one passenger in all her years. She had quoted, "When I found I had crossed that line, I looked at my hands to see if I was the same person. There was such a glory over everything. The sun came like gold through the trees and over the fields, and I felt like I was in heaven." Frederick Douglass had said, "Accepting of John Brown of sacred memory, I know no one who has willingly encountered more perils and hardships to serve our enslaved people than Harriet Tubman. She was known as one of the most bravest and hard-working people in the continent." Around 1863, Tubman helped in the Civil War as a cook, nurse, and sometimes a spy. At the end of the Civil War, she came back to Auburn, New York. Harriet Tubman got married to Nelson Davis in 1869 in the Presbyterian Church. He was 22 years younger than her. Around 1874, the couple adopted a baby girl named Gertie and lived happily. Their happiness ended with terrible news of her husband's death. She was involved in women's suffrage speeches in Boston, New York, and Washington, and had donated her property to the African Methodist Episcopal Zion Church in Auburn to be converted into a home for the aged and indigent colored people. Harriet Tubman lived to 93 years old, and she died of pneumonia in 1913. She was buried in military honors at Fort Hill Cemetery in Auburn, New York. This certain day in history, March 10th, Alexander Graham Bell made the first telephone call and said, "Mr. Watson, come here. I want to see you." Both of these wonderful human beings showed determination in their lives, and it paid off. Hard work is the key to achieving something that may seem to be impossible and impractical.